Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on orienting edges during your F2L. Now this is something that I use in some of my solves, particularly in one-handed solving, as I think that's where it provides sort of the most benefits to your solves. So firstly, why do you want to orient edges during our F2L? So firstly, if all of our edges are oriented by the time we get to the final pair, we can use techniques such as winter variation and CLS to skip OLL more often. But more importantly for me, if I have all my edges oriented by the time I get to the OLL, I can do stuff like COLL more often and force edge-only PLLs, as well as skip PLL more often. And in addition, having your edges oriented means that if you know ZBLLs and stuff like that, you'll come across them more often as well, like cases that you know. So the benefits of orienting edges throughout F2L are going to be greater if you know more algorithms, obviously. So in that sense, it's a rather advanced technique, and it mainly applies to one-handed solving. So that's mainly where I'll use it. I wouldn't use it too much in two hands. The reasons for that are because doing COLL then an edge permutation can sometimes actually be slower than just regular two-class layer in two-hand solving. But in one-handed, obviously edge permutations are really fast, and they help your times a lot. And secondly, I think that the amount of look ahead required for some of this stuff for orienting edges through F2L doesn't really lend itself to two-handed solving. And I think that most people's turning speeds for two-handed solving, it's probably sometimes inefficient to try and orient your edges during normal 3x3 solves. But in one-handed solving, we're turning a lot slower. We're able to look ahead to a much greater extent and use these sort of techniques really effectively. So my method for orienting edges during F2L is very sort of general, intuitive, and I mainly do it by solving F2L pairs in different ways or adding extra moves in your F2L. But this is opposed to something like ZB F2L, where all of the edge orientation is done during your final pair. My sort of techniques, you orient your edges during, say, your first, second, third pair. So the main goal, I suppose, is to maybe have 3 top layer edges oriented by the time that you get to your last pair, so that your final pair can just be 2gen. And this can be achieved some of the time by, as I said, just doing a couple of extra moves in F2L, solving pairs differently. I think I prefer this sort of thing rather than something like ZBF2L, as it's all intuitive. You don't need to learn any algorithms, and it's something you can figure out yourself as well. And the downside, though, it's obviously really hard to get this to work every single time. And you need to be very advanced and have really good look ahead skills, because you're going to have to be aware of 4 or more pieces and their respective orientations, and even try and sort of mentally visualize the future state of the cube after you solve an F2L pair, and multiple pieces in that future state. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't work every time, or it won't work easily every time. Alright, so what exactly is a correctly oriented edge? Well, firstly, it's relative to your cube position. That's what makes something like this, even more difficult. Because, for example, in this position, say, this edge is correctly oriented, whereas if we do a Y, it is now considered sort of misoriented in this cube orientation. And sort of an easy way to think about if an edge is oriented is if you can solve it using R, U, and L, D moves. R, U, L, and D moves. So, for example, this white-orange edge, you just do R' D and it's solved. Whereas, let's say this red-white edge, you can't solve it with, L, D, R, or U, any combination of those moves. You have to do an F or a B' or B or whatever to be able to solve it. So that's just the easy way to think about if an edge is oriented. So that's sort of why what I want to do generally is to put 2 or 3, most probably 3 edges into the top layer oriented during your F2L, so that by the time you get to your final pair, you have 3 top layer edges oriented. Right, just to give you a basic idea of what I mean when I say solving pairs differently, in order to affect different pieces. This is just a really basic example of something we can do. So for example, we have the corner solved, and we need to solve this edge here in all cases, right? But we notice that our edges are oriented differently the last layer edge is oriented differently in every single case, and we just need to solve the edge in multiple different ways so that we get our last layer edges oriented. So for example, in this one, it's just the standard insert. Pair it up, put it in. In this one, we could do something a bit different, a sledgehammer, and then insert. This one, we can do something even a bit different, so take out the corner there and pair it up there. Alright, so all that being said, what I'm going to do now is just do a bunch of examples using this technique. As like I said, it's a very intuitive technique, so I'm going to give you sort of an idea of my thought process when using this sort of thing. Alright, white cross. Alright, so immediately we have three edges oriented in our top layer. So we're probably going to even have to break this up as well, which is, I mean, that's alright, we're allowed to do that. So I'll just go into this pair first, this pair second, and instead of rotating and doing the pair like this, I'd probably hide the corner in this fashion, just so we can put this edge into the top layer, this edge here, oriented. And then, no matter how we solve this pair, we're actually unable to misorient any of these edges, as long as we use the right face and the top face here. If we're using the F face, obviously we might be bringing an edge down into here, which could misorient it. But if we just use right and top, then we're fine. And the final edge, we can do, I mean, something like this. So we've got the pair, bring it out, insert, and then we've got CLL. Alright, white cross again. Very inefficient. Okay, so immediately this looks like something where we're probably not going to be able to orient our edges, but we'll see. So I would probably insert this back edge here, and then I would notice if I just did 3 moves in from here, I would be able to orient this edge and this edge. So just inserting this with a sort of cancelled sledgehammer orients those two. Now from here, it gets a bit tricky because our edges in this position, our 2 edges here are oriented, but these 2 are not, and similarly in this position, these 2 are oriented, but these 2 are not. So I probably wouldn't be able to orient these edges sort of efficiently. So I would go ahead as normal. All right. So immediately we've got these 2 edges oriented, so we're looking pretty good at the moment. So we'll do the back pair first, this pair here. Okay, now here, what we could have done is do something like this, pair this up, insert it, and whatever. But there's a better way, and we can orient edges. So we see that we have this yellow edge in the back here, and what we can do, if we solve these two edges, bring this misoriented one down into here. So our goal is to, let me restart. So we've got this F2L pair. What we want to do is in solving this pair, get this edge down into here and put this edge into the top layer oriented, which if we do right and new moves, this edge will end up in the top layer oriented no matter what. Because we're bringing this edge here and this edge will eventually go here. So that's sort of a fundamental, I wouldn't be thinking that in my solve. That's how you would sort of think about it initially learning something like this. So solving this pair, bringing this edge down into here, and this edge comes to the top, and keeping these 2 oriented, which naturally occurs if we use R and U moves because they're already oriented. So you can solve it something like this. Right? And then the final pair, COL, U-perm. Got it. Alright, so that was sort of a long-winded explanation to give you sort of a basic idea. Alright, so next. Alright, so I didn't see anything from this position, so I would go to here, and I'd probably do these 2 edges first, and noting that, solving these 2, putting them in the back, I will orient this edge and actually this edge as well. If we're using right and U moves, because this edge comes up here and that one goes in the back there. Now, I'm not sure there's a great way to do this. We've got some pretty crappy cases. Alright, so we've made it to the last pair here, so the last two pairs, and in this orientation, these two edges are misoriented, so that's a bit sort of tricky to deal with, but in this orientation, these two edges are misoriented, right? So what we can do is just add 3 extra moves to orient these two edges, and then solve the last two pairs from this orientation. So just add 1, 2, 3. So what that does, it pushes this edge to the top, brings this edge down, and orients it, and it's now oriented in this position. So then we would just go about solving the F2L with right and U moves. And we do a CLL and then U pen. Alright, so cross again. Okay, so what we're going to do probably, obviously note where your top layer edges are, and we're going to actually try and keep these two and solve our first pair. So do something like this, put these edges here, and then insert them in the back. And what we can do as well is orient this edge. We'll be bringing this one down, but that's okay, we can figure it out later. So solve this pair into the back. And then, like what we did before actually, so in this orientation we have a bunch of misoriented edges, these 4 in fact, but in this orientation we only have 2 misoriented edges, right? So what we can do is do something similar again, so U, R to bring this edge up here, U prime, R prime, and now holding it here, all the edges are oriented, so we can solve the last two pairs using L, U and R moves, and we're going to end up with our edges all oriented on the top. Or we can use like CLS. Alright. This one's going to be tricky. We'll see what we can do. So, back pair here. Now if we insert with a sledgehammer in the back, we can orient these two edges at once. Might be a tricky sort of finger trick. Now what we can do is, so if we join these two up like this, alright, so we're at the final pair here, sorry for the fast forwarding, but we know that if we do a lefty sledgehammer into this slot, this edge is going to come out oriented, and because we don't see yellow here, we know that this sticker on the back is yellow. So if we do lefty sledgehammer here, all of our edges are going to be oriented, and it's going to be really easy to do the last pair. And yay, we can be pro. Alright, let's see what we can do. So do the back pair first, this pair here. Oh, this is a really easy sort of case. This is going to be good. So in this orientation, obviously we have this edge misoriented, this one, this one, this one. But if we were to do, say, a Y prime, we get more edges oriented. So what we can do is, alright, we'll solve this pair first actually, noting that this edge is actually misoriented, this one's oriented, and this one's misoriented. So we can do something like this. Now, instead of inserting this pair, what we can do is actually store this edge in the back. So store this edge in the back whilst bringing this edge out here, so that we can now insert that as well, and then move over here. And in this orientation now all of our edges are oriented, so we can insert that. But we get a really crappy last layer case. Alright, okay, we're immediately noticing that in this orientation, these 4 edges, last layer edges, are all good. So we're going to see what we can do. So, solving the first pair. Now in situations like this where we have 3 oriented, I probably wouldn't want to mess them up too much, And there's a really easy way, to solve this pair. We don't necessarily have to, we don't have to misorient one of these edges. We can do it like this. Right? So that leaves us 3 on top, and then we can do the same sort of thing with that. And then with the last edge, we just have to, in order to orient these two, we insert it like this. So pair it up, and then sledgehammer. Right? And then Nicholas, U-perm. Alright, so back pair there. Back left pair probably. Now here's where we can do something really fancy. I'm not sure I'd necessarily do something like this, but we notice if we do L prime U2L, right, what we've done is, in this orientation, all our edges are oriented. So we've done L prime U2L, now we've inserted this corner here, the edge is solved here, so we can just do a U prime, like that, and just do multi-slotting. And we can even do winter variation as well on top of that. That was really fancy. I don't think I'd do that. But it's good to be able to sort of understand that sort of thing. Because if you can do that, then you can do sort of simpler cases as well during normal solves. Even if you understood that, that's good. Okay, this one's not looking likely, so I'll just go into my first pair, these two, at the back. Oh, this one's actually alright. So what we can do, instead of solving these two purely with R and U moves, we can simply orient these two edges using F prime U prime F, then solve it, and I'd obviously noted that the rest of the edges were oriented. And then, oh, we get a bad loss in that case, oh well. Alright. Okay, this is a good case. So, we're just going to have to orient these two edges by doing this, by solving this pair in this way. So hiding the corner here brings up this edge to orient it in the last layer, and also brings this yellow sticker down to the side here, so that when we insert it, the yellow sticker comes up there. I haven't practiced much one-handed on this scans. Alright, so first pair these two. Oh, this is really nice. We can skip OLL here. So in this orientation, sorry, these two edges need to be oriented. So what we can do is do this. R, U prime, R prime. And then we have a sort of, I can't remember what sort of subset this is, but it's just an OLL skip case where all the edges on top, all the pieces on top are oriented, and just these two edges need to be swapped. So all the corners are good, and you got the white one here, so it's like this. It's really easy. Okay. Solving that one normally, solving that one normally. We can solve these two abnormally now. So this is just a simple one. It's sort of the same sort of thing actually that I've been showing you before, just doing F prime U F, and then you're good. And also you might notice that here I wouldn't do normal U R U prime R prime. I would do U2 R U2 R prime, and that's to force like a soon case rather than a pie case. Cross done, back two probably, these two, and then in this position, because of the way we've solved them, all of these are oriented, so all we have to do to keep the orientation is simply just solve these two with R and U moves, as opposed to solving them like this. Oh, we got the same case as before. Okay, we got a lot of edges oriented here. These three already. I'll probably do something like this actually. So to solve these two, I would separate them like this, just to put that edge up there. Solve them, keeping these three oriented. That was a fairly straightforward one actually, because we managed to keep the three edges oriented pretty much the whole time since the first pair. So it wasn't too much sort of extra, wasn't too much extra effort. All right. Wow, what a good cross. These two are oriented, it's quite nice. We could do something cool here and solve these two and get all four yellows on top. Like that. Obviously you have to misorient one edge to put that piece in. Yep. Alright, we're getting towards the end. Yeah, we're not going to do anything there. No. Oh yeah, I know this one. So, yay. Alright, not too many more. These two. Alright, so here's a good example actually, where we both insert this edge and orient all your yellow edges at the same time. So what we want to do is get this oriented, this one oriented, and get these two pieces into this position. So it's simply done by U prime R prime like that, and then putting them in the back. Alright, last one. So, I'll try and make this good. So, we've done our cross. Now, I mean, there's that one, and this one. In terms of pairs, none of them are particularly great. I'd probably do something like this to solve those. And these two, obviously, we go like that. And then these two here, and I notice that this back edge is also oriented, so when I solve this pair normally, I'll get 3 in the top. And then all we have to do is make sure we don't misorient them in solving the last pair. It's pretty easy. Although not the greatest COLL. So in conclusion, I'd say definitely try and experiment with this sort of thing yourself. Even if that means, you know, your goal at the end of F2L should be to have all the edges oriented. Even if you're going to be really inefficient at that, even just doing that gives you a better sense of the sort of things, the sort of moves and algorithms that will both solve your pairs and orient the edges. So even if you do that and it's really inefficient, don't worry. But like I said at the start, you don't have to do this every single time. Like I would only use this, you know, maybe about half to 2/3 of the time I would successfully get all the edges oriented, because sometimes it's it's not feasible or it's not efficient at all. So just be sort of discerning when you use it, obviously. And also, I'm sure this will be rather confusing to a lot of people. So make sure you sort of advanced before you try something similar to this. Other than that, that's pretty much it. If you have questions, leave them in the comments, and I will definitely get to them because I know there'll be, I think there'll be a few questions for this sort of video. All right, cool. See ya.